Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Pauline Harris. I am a board member of John Hope Franklin Center for Reconciliation, and I'm just here to give you the welcome and just thank you for coming out this evening. We're very excited about our keynote speaker tonight, and we want to give thanks to Dr. Michael Eric Dyson for being with us on our initial night of the symposium. We also want to thank our sponsors and your attendance for this event. It's been a while. This has been kind of like a reunion this evening, and I've enjoyed seeing a lot of people I haven't seen for about 2 years. And we want to also thank you for your continued support of the John Hope Franklin Center Symposium, especially these last 13 years. Also, I want to make you aware that we want to get your input. We have a survey that is a brief survey. There's a QR code that's going to be displayed on the screen. So if you got your cell phones, just click that QR code and just give us your response on your takeaway for this evening. We need your help because we just want to make sure that we are providing you with a program that will be beneficial, especially towards our mission of reconciliation. Also, we also look forward to working with everyone. We have several days of things that are going to take place, but we want to also especially want to honor the ancestors of Greenwood and especially the Native Americans of this area and state, along with the spirit of harmony that connects all of us as a community. Once again, special thanks to our sponsors, and we have a few sponsors that are still in the process of submitting funds, but they've been identified on the screen, and they make this event that is happening possible. So now, I'm going to turn this time over to Dr. Dwayne Dixon and Reuben Gant for a moment to remember a legend, Mr. Julius Pegues, moderator for this evening.
Thank you again, and thank you for being with us for this 13th annual symposium, an event that was special for Mr. Julius Pegues, the past chair of the John Hope Franklin Center for Reconciliation. While we no longer have him with us physically, his legacy, his footprint remains with us each day, and so we take this moment to remember him, and we want to honor him and his family for the sacrifices he has made on behalf of reconciliation within our community and across the nation and the world. When I would ask, and so I am the chair for this year's symposium, and I'm also a board member, but when I would go to Mr. Pegues and ask him if he would say something at the symposium, for example, ask him to do the welcome or something like that, he'd say, well, I can do that. But he would consistently ask me, is there a board member who can do that other than me? Because I've done this for so long. He wanted to open the door for other people to have the opportunity to also tell their story of reconciliation. And so he was consistent with that. It was not his desire to be the center of attention. His single desire was to help others know that they were valued and their contributions were necessary. In particular, he looked for ways to assist others who were being mistreated or overlooked. He partnered with others who had similar interest in helping those who needed help. Tonight, I invite Reuben Gant to share a few examples of Julius's passion to stand in the gap for others when their educational and talents were limited by the powers that be.
Good evening. I've been given the task of sharing with you some of Julius's accomplishments geared toward his passion for education. And it would be difficult to do that in the time that I've been allotted to stand here and go over everything that Julius had an integral part in playing. But a couple of things I just want to bring to everybody's attention. The year and time may be not right, but I think in the early 60s or 70s, Julius was responsible for saving Carver Middle School. Carver was actually closed by the Tulsa Public School System. And Julius led a rally amongst the residents of the community to save Carver. And so Carver was reopened, not by TPS, but by Julius and these community advocates that he had gathered to reopen Carver under what was then they called the Freedom School concept. And Julius, with a couple other people, or a few other people, actually paid the salaries of the teachers at Carver. So without Julius, we may not have a Carver Middle School today. Another thing was partnering with Nancy McDonald. Julius led the initiative to integrate Booker T. Washington High School in the mid-70s, I think 73, 74. And instead of Booker T, I think there was a federal mandate that it had to be integrated. But instead of busing black kids from the north to the south, Julius and Nancy led an initiative to recruit white kids to be bused from the south to the north. And that's what created the Booker T. Washington High School that we're experiencing today. But without Julius and Nancy McDonald, we may not even have a Booker T. Washington High School. So his accomplishments in the area of education are massive. He was a stickler for getting an education because he felt like that was the key to the future. So many other things I could tell you about Julius, but I'll save that for a later time. And now I'll turn the microphone back over to Mr. Dickens.
So it's important to us to recognize that reconciliation occurs through individuals, but collectively we provide that voice that's a united voice. And so tonight we're going to hear from Miss Olivia Davis. And so thank you, Reuben, for giving us an insight into the individual, Mr. Pegues. And so now we're going to have the pleasure of hearing from Ms. Davis, who will provide a tribute in song for Mr. Pegues. Ms. Davis is a recent graduate of the University of Tulsa, receiving her Bachelor of Arts degree in music and 2 minors in anthropology and African American studies. She first began her music education at the age of 10, studying piano and music theory for several years at Barthelme's Conservatory. Olivia has always had an affinity for music and the arts. After graduating from the conservatory, she transitioned from piano to studying vocal music. She has a background in classical music, musical theater, contemporary and jazz vocal music. In addition to her extensive classical repertoire, Olivia has spent the last 3 years studying and performing compositions by African American composers alongside her vocal instructors at the University of Tulsa. Dedicated to her craft and her community, Olivia is a professional, a talented musician, and frequently performs locally in Tulsa. Now, in tribute to our legacy builder, Julius Pegues, I now give you Miss Olivia Davis.
When you're weary, feeling small, and tears are in your eyes, I'll dry them all. I'm on your side when times get rough and friends just can't be found like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay me down when you're down and out, when you're on the street, when evening falls so hard, I will comfort you. I'll take your part when darkness comes and pain is all around, like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay me down. Sail on, silver boy, sail on by. Your time has come to shine, and though your dreams are on their way, see how they shine. If you need a friend, I'm sailing by, right behind, like a bridge over troubled water. I will ease your mind. troubled water. I can ease your mind like a bridge over troubled waters. I will ease your mind.
Many thanks, Ms. Davis, for your ministry in song and the musicianship. I am sure we would receive the big smile that you see on Mr. Pegues's photo today. That's what he would be giving right now. Thank you very much. I now turn the evening over to Mr. Carlos Hill as we prepare to hear from Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. Dr. Hill is Regents Professor and Chair of the Clara Luper Department of African and African American Studies at the University of Oklahoma, and author of 3 books and founder of the Tulsa Race Massacre Oklahoma Teachers Institute. Dr. Hill is a much sought-after lecturer and writer. I give you Dr. Hill, who will introduce Dr. Dyson.
Good evening, good evening. How is everyone this evening? Can we give another round of applause for that beautiful, beautiful song? Very beautiful. Thank you. That was a blessing. That was a gift. I want to just start by thanking a few people. First and foremost, I want to thank John Hope Franklin Center for Reconciliation for inviting me to be a part of this 13th gathering to have a most profound discussion about reconciliation and what that means, not only for this community, but for the world, because this institution is leading not just for this community, for the world. So thank you for inviting me to the 13th gathering of this most profound conversation about reconciliation. I also most definitely have to honor, and I'm looking at you, Vanessa Adam Harris, for inviting me. She is a rock, and I told her I was going to talk about her, so I'm going to talk about her. I know much of what I know about the felt history of Greenwood from her, because I've gone on tours with her many times with teachers, but also just with her. And in her bones, in the sinews of her bones, are the stories of survivors and descendants. And I've learned those stories from her, many of those stories from her, and poured those stories into this book that you see here on the table, the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, A Photographic History. And so I'm in deep gratitude for John Hope Franklin and for Vanessa especially, for her guidance, for helping me to understand this history. So thank you, Vanessa, for all you have done to help this scholar understand this most precious history of Greenwood, and this most deadliest race massacre, the deadliest attack on a Black community in American history here in Tulsa in Greenwood. I learned that story, the felt history of that story, by talking to people like Vanessa. Not just Vanessa, there were many others who helped me to understand. So I've never said this at a public gathering, but I want to make sure that I say it here because I'm in a spirit of gratitude tonight. Thank you for all that you've done to make my scholarship possible, but also the memories of survivors stay alive and will hopefully stay alive because of gatherings like this. So thank you, John Hope Franklin Center for Reconciliation. I want to always tell people who I am and ground who I am. My grandma used to always say, tell people who you are. Let them know who you're talking to. And so in the tradition of my grandmother, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am before I introduce my dear brother, Michael Eric Dyson. Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. So my name is Dr. Carlos K. Hill. My most profound honor is to be the chair of the Clara Luper Department of African and African American Studies at the University of Oklahoma. That has entitled me to spend days and weeks and now years learning from Marilyn Luper, the daughter of Clara Luper, about the 1958 sit-ins. And so it is the greatest honor of me to be the chair of that department at the University of Oklahoma. And at the University of Oklahoma, I teach the history of lynching and racial violence. And I used to tell people that I'm a historian. And that changed when I began to do work in Tulsa, when I began to understand how much more was required of me to bear witness to the history of lynching and racial violence. When you understand the depths of the sorrows of survivors, when you understand the depths of their resilience as well, you understand that justice is what is deserved for survivors. And I learned that, right, through the work with the John Hope Franklin Center, as well as the Greenwood Cultural Center, as well as other, right, key cultural institutions in Greenwood. And so my work is to try my best to bear witness to the stories of America's Black Holocaust against Black bodies, beginning with slavery and continuing to this day. And I didn't understand really what that meant until I did the work in Tulsa, and how much, right, how much hope and resilience is here, but also how much there is a need for justice for victims, survivors, and descendants of America's deadliest attack on a Black community. And I say that knowing that that is true. Nothing like that ever happened anywhere to that extent in that amount of time. I know that. And so we have to bear witness to that as we are right here today, because the flame of justice cannot go out, and it cannot be deferred permanently. We have the perfect brother, my dearest brother, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, here tonight to help us navigate these tumultuous waters of race, reparations, restitution, resilience. I want to tell you one quick story before I properly introduce Dr. Dyson. I've always wanted to meet Dr. Dyson. I have idolized my dear brother since I was in graduate school, which was not terribly long ago. And it's so great to meet someone that you have idolized, and for them to tell you, you're Dr. Hill, you wrote Beyond the Rope? That's on my bookshelf. I got that from Politics and Prose. I was like, all right, brother, you're all right with me. But that is profound mentorship that just happened there. That was inspiration that's happened there, because his work has meant so much to me, as well as the field of Black studies. Before I give a proper introduction of Dr. Dyson, I want to give a popular culture introduction that I know Dr. Dyson will appreciate. I think of when I was in my graduate school room thinking about being a professor, I was thinking about being someone like Dr. Dyson. And Dr. Dyson is sort of, when I was thinking of this, he would have been the Michael Jordan of the academy, right? He's dunking on people, left and right. But he's a bad man, but he's a good man because he'll pick them up after he's dunked on them. That's the kind of brother that we have here tonight. He's bad, but he's at the same time a good brother, a soul brother. I know you know what I'm talking about. I want to make sure, though, for the uninitiated, we know who Dr. Dyson is and the great work that he has done in so many venues, whether it's the academy or if it's in the media. Dr. Dyson has done it all. Dr. Dyson, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, is currently the Centennial Chair at Vanderbilt University and serves as University Distinguished Professor of African and African American Studies in the College of Arts and Sciences, as well as University Distinguished Professor of Ethics and Society in the Divinity School. He is also a New York Times contributing opinion writer and a contributing editor of the New Republic and of ESPN's The Undefeated website. His rise from humble roots, and I repeat, humble roots, in Detroit to his present perch as a world-class intellectual, noted author of 21 books, prominent leader, and national media fixture on outlets that you all are familiar with, testify to this dear brother's extraordinary talent. Without further ado, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. Please put your hands together.
Thank you so very kindly, Dr. Hill, for that quite generous introduction and for that powerful insight. He laid it out. All I got to do is riff off of him because he laid it out: reconciliation, restitution, reparation, justice. So real. But I want to thank Sister Vanessa Harris for this great opportunity, to Brother Reuben for this extraordinary opportunity, for this wonderful center that is run in the name of a dear friend of mine, John Hope Franklin. When I was a professor at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and he was over at Duke, we'd hang out. Well, I'd just hang out with him. Go over to his house, see him treating those beautiful flowers and soaking in his wisdom. An extraordinary man. And so it's a great opportunity to come here tonight to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and to be able to chat about ideas that are central to his existence. And it's like homecoming in a sense, not only because I received the Sankofa Award from the Tulsa Public Library, the library, a few years back, and my nephews are here. Brother Darrell Bright, Brother Rock Bright, Rocky, Rock, you know them. It's my people. You know how black people say, that's my people. But that's really my people. Like for real, for real. And you know the work they're doing here. I know it's dark. I still want them to stand up so everybody can see my peoples. and who they is. Oh, look at there. And the lights appeared. Yes. That's good. He got the God control back there. Lights, camera, action. But what an honor it is to be here tonight and to have, oh yeah, you ain't got to hit the lights that hard, bro, you know. You can go back to theater sleep time right now, you know. Thank you. But Brother Darrell, Brother Rock, such tremendous human beings. Brother Darrell, one of the greatest and fiercest advocates for education in this city and indeed in this nation. He might be GQ smooth, but he operate like his daddy, my beloved brother. But an extraordinary young man. And then Brother Rock, working on his PhD. Dr. Rock, soon. Both Darrells are extraordinary gentlemen, and it's great to see them here tonight. And I think I saw Brother DeMario Solomon, the tremendous litigator and lawyer, representing for the people and doing a hell of a job. And we are grateful for his extraordinary work, because as we know, there can be no real reconciliation without justice, without reparation, without restitution, and without confronting the vicious impediments and obstacles that continue to prevent the flourishing of communities. And we talk about individually those survivors of the horrible, heinous act of what happened in 21 here a century ago. And it is not simply about pointing fingers. It is about acknowledging the pain, because America's caught up in a denial right now. And here we just living through yet another example of what happens when Americans of a certain ilk, ideology, and institutional framework think the Second Amendment is the second commandment. Right? I'm just warming up. Y'all give me a little time. Taking off on the runway. Put your seatbelts on. It's going to be turbulent in a minute, but we're going to rise above. But what an honor it is to be here and to talk about the case for education in reconciliation, focusing on advocacy. And when we think about reconciliation, we got to talk about what we reconciling over and with. We talk about unity. Unity is critical, but unity is a bridge toward a greater future. Reconciliation is a means toward a broader end, because we don't want to reconcile to injustice. James Baldwin said we don't want to integrate into a burning house. We got to have a Parliament funkadelic sensibility. The roof. I thought y'all were down with it, man. Y'all must be into the Doobie Brothers. I don't know. And they were cold too, taking it to the streets. Or maybe I got the wrong group, but whatever, the roof was on fire. Let it burn. So when we think about the case for reconciliation or education in reconciliation and focusing on advocacy, that's critical. Already what you understand is that education is important for reconciliation, because reconciliation is not to reconcile ourselves to the status quo. Reconciliation is to bring us together after vicious separation, and we got to be honest about what separated us. And in order to do that, education is critical, but do you really want to be educated? Jesus looks at the man who's begging to be healed. He said, do you really want to be well? Do we really want to be educated? I look around and we banning books. We're banning Martin Luther King Jr. stories. We're banning The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. A certain segment of the population doesn't want to be educated. We say in America that we love history. We only love certain kinds of history. 15,000 books on Abraham Lincoln, a bunch of books on Thomas Jefferson, and they deserve it. Even Aaron Burr got books on him now. I think he was the cousin of Raymond Burr, who was starred on. Oh, there we go. Little Perry Mason. I'll get to Columbo soon. So, Aaron Burr having a duel with Alexander Hamilton. Rat-a-tat-tat, never hesitate to put a founding father on his back. Peep out the manuscript. Okay, I'm sorry, And so, do we really want to be educated? Because to be educated is to be made aware of ideals and institutions and ideas and implications and inferences of structures and contexts that are not often conducive to us continuing in ignorance. America says it wants to be educated, yet it ain't willing to give the kind of money necessary to educate our children. And now it's trying to warn them against CRT. You don't know the difference between CRT and OPP. Get your little 90s hip hop up in here. Since these mumble rappers done taken over. I don't know about y'all, but I don't know what they be saying. I pride myself on studying hip hop, but dadgum, know what I'm saying? No, I really don't. I've been black for 63 years, but I can't quite figure it out. I hear the Migos, and I knew that part. Walk it like you talk it. Hey, that part I understood. Here we are. We say we are interested in education. We say we're interested in making people aware, and yet we are against critical race theory. We got law professors and law deans here tonight. We know that critical race theory is an act of jurisprudential rationality asserting the legitimacy of taking context into consideration while adjudicating competing claims about what's true. And critical race theory, Kimberly Crenshaw, Derek Bell, Marie Matsuda, Charles Lawrence, Gary Delgado, what they trying to say? They're trying to say when it comes to racism, it ain't just about if you call somebody the N-word. It ain't just about if you got some bias and bigotry as an individual. Don't think individual, think institution. Don't just think personal, think systemic and structural. All critical race theory is trying to do is apply common sense to legal principles. And it's an abstract legal theory taught in schools. Ain't nobody teaching critical race theory in the 5th grade. We trying to catch up with Langston Hughes, Mary McLeod Bethune, maybe some Chaucer, some Shakespeare, some Robert Frost, whose woods these are, I think I know his house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year, my little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. That's what we trying to do. We ain't trying to say, yes, we must confront the deconstructive practices of racial iterations such that we are capable of nominating the identities that have confused the American soul. Ain't what we trying to do. We ain't trying to do that in 5th grade. That's 6th grade work. But when they attack critical race theory and allow it to metastasize across the horizon of intellectual engagement, anything speaking about race that they don't like is made to be critical race theory. So they didn't want to study about enslavement, about Reconstruction, about Jim Crow, about the massacre where they dropped bombs in 1921 on American soil. The greatest act of terror was not 9/11, but in 21 in Greenwood and Archer. That's where. That's why one of the native sons and groups said, "You dropped a bomb on me." And so we don't want to be educated, because to be educated means we got to confront the ugliness of America as well as its greatness. We want to be educated, we got to tell the truth about what's going on. Everything ain't critical race theory. It ain't got to be. Now they're trying to ban and outlaw teaching history. Now they're trying to ban and outlaw talking about black history. Anything that will bring up anything that makes young white kids uncomfortable. Education is about discomfort. I don't know about you, but I was real uncomfortable with my ignorance when I faced knowledge. It made me itch. Made me hurt, made me stretch, had to open my mind. Discomfort is a critical ally to pedagogy. Discomfort is a great means to make folk get up off the schneid and learn what they're supposed to know. I ain't here to make you comfortable. I don't care what your race or sexual orientation or your ethnicity is. I'm a paid pest. I'm upending ideas and challenging the status quo. Ain't trying to make you comfortable, but ain't that something the right wing always talk about? You little snowflakes. You want safe spaces. Who the snowflake now? Ron DeSantis in Florida passed that law, signed it, where it literally says anything that makes, he said it, you heard him, he says it makes our kids uncomfortable. And yet you want to talk about black and brown kids. You want to talk about minoritized and racialized populations as being soft and seeking safe spaces and snowflakes. And yet y'all can't even deal with the truth. It's a Jack Nicklaus moment from A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. And so education is critical in reconciliation, because you got to know what you're reconciling with and for. And what was at stake and what has been at stake is the history of inequality in this nation. And the ways in which people of color have often paid a price for it and have not been acknowledged as being leaders in their roles to defend and define America. Even Stephen Morris, better known to you as Stevie Wonder, wrote a song, "First man to die for the flag we now hold high was a black man." Come on, y'all. 1976, black man on Songs in the Key of Life. Where y'all at? First man to die for the flag we now hold high. Crispus Attucks, formerly enslaved black man, the first to die. The first to die for the freedom of America, for an American nation that often enslaved its peoples of color. What we reconciling over? We reconciling over the vicious tendentiousness and the division in a society that has created hierarchies and divisions of labor and divisions of understanding human beings and seeing some as inferior and some as superior, some as supreme, and others as not worth the bother. Education is critical. It will get us out of living in what Gore Vidal called the United States of amnesia. And I'll say that the theme song is supplied by Barbra Streisand. I know you young people don't know who Barbra Streisand is. No, I ain't talking about Taylor Swift or Katy Perry or Lady Gaga. Talking about Barbara. Memories. Y'all don't remember that, man. Y'all. She sang that song, The Way We Were. She said, what's too painful to remember, we simply choose to forget. And so it's too painful for us to understand the heinous misdeeds we did. It's too painful for us to recognize that the very people we now admire did some horrible things, lynching and castration and raping and pillaging and plundering American communities. Now, this is not simply about pointing the finger, because obviously we had white allies who stood side by side, Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison, trying to push Abraham Lincoln. Because Lincoln wasn't necessarily going to do it the way we thought he was going to do it. But Negroes was like, I don't care what his motivation was. When he signed it, that declaration, that Emancipation Proclamation, and some Negroes in Texas found out 2 years later, that's why we got the Juneteenth holiday to begin with. It is interesting that we're celebrating being late by 2 years. And so, my brothers and sisters, at our best, America was deeply invested in trying to contend with the forces of racism, the forces of denial of opportunity, the forces of dehumanizing who we are as a people. And on the other hand, it is the attempt to come to grips with the ugly histories that we have generated that we don't want to confront. And yet, in order to reconcile, we got to acknowledge what we done and what has been done in order to get to where we need to be. And so education is critical. John Hope Franklin was about that. That From Slavery to Freedom was such a seminal text. He wrote so many others. But that From Slavery to Freedom was critical because it taught us the critical turns in American history, from enslavement, bringing 20 and some odd Negroes to America and extracted from their resting place on the soil of Africa and brought here against their will forcibly as indentured servants, and then slavery getting going in the middle of the 1600s, and then in full force and effect. And then construction and reconstruction, and then going on from there to denying the right to vote, and then having the 14th, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments passed in that window of opportunity for 12 years after enslavement. And then apartheid. And then Jim Crow. And then the inability of America to tell the truth. And telling that truth is critical to us as a nation. And so education is critical in reconciliation because it tells us the outlines, the stories, the narratives, the weaves, that are crucial to understanding what and who we are. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. That cannot come about unless we are able to acknowledge, for instance, what happened in 1921 must be met by the determined effort of present figures to address through reparation, through restitution, through reconstitution, through justice. And to me, justice is what love sounds like when it speaks in public. If you say you love somebody, you got to treat them justly. And so education is critical because it gives us a tool. It gives us analyses. It gives us books and literature. It gives us essays and readings. It gives us frameworks. It gives us agenda. It gives us curricula to understand where we are and what we're up against. And when you see what's going on in Oklahoma, and then we see what's going on in Buffalo, with a young white kid believing that he's doing the right thing by trying to start a race war, by killing black people. We know it ain't nothing new. This is not who we are. This is precisely who we have been. This is what America has been about. The denial of humanity, and then linking that to the coming decision of a woman being denied the legitimate right to determine what to do with her body, that even rapists' families might have say-so over the progeny, over the children that are developed forcibly, because we have now raided women's wombs. We say, as Americans who are conservative, that you are the party of keeping the government out of your house, and yet you're in a woman's womb. Again. And so education is critical because it awakens us and it makes us aware of our own bigotries and blindnesses. And even oppressed people can oppress people. I was preaching at a church in Cleveland. I didn't mean to say where, but dadgummit, it's too late now. Black church, black woman came up to me. She said, "You know you're going to hell." I said, "Ma'am, I know 25 reasons why I should. I'm just curious, which one do you know that you can announce that I'm going to hell at church after I done had preached?" She says, "Don't be smart. You know what I'm talking about." She said, "You said in the pulpit that God created gay people." I said, "And you think I'm going to hell? You think there's a God for straight people and one for gay? Either God made everybody or God ain't made nobody. Ain't no in between. What, God took Wednesday off? Oh my God, it's really rough creating human beings. I need a break. So a lesser God took the second shift and came in and created gay people? That's what they said about you as a black woman, that you are the child of a lesser God. You can't be oppressed and then turn around and oppress people and then trying to justify it by using a biblical narrative to support and substantiate your bigotry. And so, my brothers and sisters, education is critical in reconciliation because it gives us the outlines, the stories, the narratives, but it also gives us what we're aiming for. We want to be reconciled to each other in truth, in justice, by doing the right thing, not by singing kumbaya and having a namby-pamby, we are the world. No disrespect to Mike. But the truth is, we will have reconciliation when we have truth and justice, We will have reconciliation when we have reparation and reconstitution and restitution. We will have reparation and restitution and reconstitution when we have true democracy, and then we can reconcile to each other. Before that, we just having a premature party without understanding that we must ultimately love each other and love the hell out of each other. And that's why when we focus on advocacy, advocacy is critical in the process of education, because after you know something, you ought to want to promote what you know. Not like these folk who are trying to ban books. Read more books. Don't ban ideas, read more ideas. Don't ban speech, speak more. Only those who are insecure and afraid don't want to confront the truth of what we know the case to be. And a lot of people don't want to confront the truth, my brothers and sisters, because it does hurt, it does make you stretch your minds. And we're worried about young white kids being uncomfortable. I tell you, I teach them for a living, and they be mad at their parents for not teaching them this stuff before. They were like, I didn't have this in AP. I didn't have this in high school. How come I'm just learning it in your class? We does what we does. And so, yes, young white people will be made uncomfortable by the fact that they live in a society that has often blinded them to the necessity of grappling with serious issues that demand our attention. Whether it's about race, whether it's about class, whether it's about sexuality. None of us can afford to retreat into the wombs of our pet peeves and our cherished bigotry. To be educated is to be made uncomfortable. To be educated is to be turned out, forced to grapple with ideas that we are not necessarily normally attracted to. And that's why when we hear these shibboleths and these nostrums and these words from these politicians and the aftermath of yet another act of gun violence, they ain't want to do nothing about it because, as Steve Kerr, the coach, said, for Golden State, they just want to stay in power. 50 senators who are not doing what the mass of people in America want: reasonable background checks for guns. They want you to show IDs to vote, but they're more rigorous about keeping you from voting than loading up on cartilages and magazines. This sickness, this madness, this worship of the gun, this fetishization of the firearm, no other industrial nation suffers like we do. They got mental illness there too, but they ain't got access to guns to act on it. And why is it that when young white kids do stuff, is they mentally ill? When black folk do it, they're just perverted and evil. And so in order to reconcile ourselves to the truth, what we need is to be deeply and profoundly educated. Then we advocate for the least of these. We advocate for those whose backs are against the wall. We advocate for those without voices. Even if it makes you uncomfortable in your pew at your church. God is an atheist to most of that madness anyway. Martin Luther King Jr. said, I pass by some of these white churches at times and I wonder who is their God. And if that's who your God is, I'm an atheist. If your God tells you to hurt people because of their skin color, I'm an atheist. If your God tells you to hate people because of their sexual orientation, I'm an atheist. If your God tells you that women are second-class citizens, I am an atheist to your religious prognostication. God says, don't give me your sacrifices and fill my nostrils with your burnt offerings. It is all for naught if at the end of the day you are not about treating the least of these with justice and decency. And so as I end, this reconciliation is necessary to make America a better place after we do the right thing, after we say the right thing. Not after we engage in, not what the right wing means by it, cancel culture, where we beat up on folk we disagree with and disallow them the space and grace to be redeemed. Ain't nobody that perfect. You gonna be the canceler today, you gonna be the cancelee tomorrow. Zero sum, zero acceptance, zero tolerance is a right-wing conservative idea. Because the rest of us know all of us gonna mess up. Can we at least have some space to reconstitute our lives? I don't know about y'all, but I was helping a famous preacher once back in '80 as he was about to go preach, and I had to pick him up at the hotel, and he said, "Young man, it's easy for a young preacher to damn people to the heap pile, but it's harder to get in there and help them clean themselves off." He said, "The older I get, the more I preach about grace. I guess it's because I need more of it." I don't know about you, but I need grace. I need understanding and redemption, not as a relief from my duty to do the right thing, but to acknowledge that all of us are frail and fallen and fractured. All of us are finite. And we need to love the hell out of each other in order to get to a place where we can transform this world. And so the case for education is important. Reconciliation necessary, advocating for those who are vulnerable, imperative. But at the end of the day, we got to translate our love into action, into justice, so that the possibility of reconciliation is preserved in our determination to do the right thing. And when we do that, then we will have achieved this country as James Baldwin spoke about it. And then we can say, perhaps then, e pluribus unum. Because on this day, 2 years ago, a black man in Minnesota died under the knee of a cop. But there were several cops, 2 white, 1 black, 1 Asian. So much for DEI work. You can have diversity all you want, but if it's not for a just end, it's only reproducing the pathology of the status quo. Let's have real justice in America. And as soon as we said George Floyd was dead and we want reconciliation, the reactionary forces came out. Then we went from determining that we would put a black space up on Instagram, or institutions and corporations would send money to those arenas in life that deserved it. And yet at the same time, there were reactionary forces trying to undercut and undermine the legitimacy of black and brown and red and yellow participation in the broader pageantry of American democracy. When we tell the truth, when we have reparation, when we have reconstitution, when we have restitution, when we pay back what we owe, then we reconcile in the name of the principles and ideals for which we have been able to sacrifice. Then we can say e pluribus unum, out of many, one. Thank you so very kindly.
Can you hear me? All righty. Thank you, thank you. Can we give another round of applause for Dr. Dyson? Please, another round of applause. And I just want to start by saying Dr. Dyson has just set a wonderful example for how restorative education looks like. He centered the conversation about restorative justice around joy, around love, around understanding. That was what he centered in this conversation. Not hate, not revenge, but love and joy and respect, coming to respect. He centered love. We gotta love the hell out of each other in order to heal. And so what he just did is an example of what education looks like. That's restorative. And so this is why it's so profound to have you here today.
Thank you, sir. In
Tulsa this evening, having this conversation about a sacred community. And I used to not say sacred community until I began to slowly learn the story of this extraordinary community, how it was destroyed. And I knew how it had been destroyed. I knew that story. But what I did not fully appreciate and understand is how the community very rapidly rebuilt. And only 20 years later, Greenwood was experiencing a golden age and was larger, more prosperous, perhaps than it had been in 1921. And so the most profound question that I have for the rest of my career is, where did they find the strength to rebuild after they had built, if not the most prosperous Black community in the country at that time? How did they find the strength to rebuild and make Greenwood better than it had been without any support and help from the city?
Right. No, it's going.
Please tell us, where does that strength come from?
Yeah, it's remarkable. You've stated it in such an eloquent fashion. And the tragedy and travesty is they shouldn't have had to have done it alone, by themselves, right? I mean, think about it. Enslavement, the only people that got reparations in slavery were white slave owners who got compensated for the loss of their property once freedom came through emancipation. The enslaved never got a dime. They were supposed to get, what, 40 acres and a mule? Ain't got that. And so, you know, it had been talked about within the context of emancipation, but the president who succeeded, Abraham Lincoln, snatched it right back. The general had insisted that it would occur, and some 40,000 formerly enslaved people took up a bunch of acres, but then they got booted off and kicked off the land. Could vote, then couldn't vote, and the like. And so you're right when you think about the fact that the Black folk here did an amazing thing. And they did what Black folk have often done without credit. That took what you gave us, what little you gave us, seized the authority, commandeered the means to reconstitute and recreate our own existence without any help. And they always telling us, trying to preach to us, you know, you got to lift yourself up by your own bootstraps. You know you don't need no government to help you out. You got to do it yourself. We ain't had nothing, but self-help is the only help we've often had. Ain't nobody been helping us. right? So the argument to black people as if we don't already know that self-help is critical is an insult to the traditions anciently inscribed in our collective imagination about how we have got to get over. Booker T. Washington didn't have to tell us, let down your pails where you are. We was already doing that, right? And when Du Bois spoke about the necessity for that education, we had tremendous impulses to do it. So how we did it, the same way we built fraternal and sorority organizations. The same way we had voluntary organizations. The Freedmen's Bureau was established, but often that didn't turn out to help us ultimately as much as it could have. But we established colleges, churches, opened avenues of business by ourselves and with the help of some enlightened white brothers and sisters. But often we did it on our own. And so when I think about Brother Pegues and his wonderful, beautiful widow, Dr. Wynette Pegues, and their lovely daughter, Angie, I think about that legacy of self-assertion in the midst of it. When I think about Brother DeMario going to court to fight a legal battle like a present-day Thurgood Marshall or Constance Baker Motley. That's the spirit we had. When I think about a Dr. Carlos Hill, Carlos with a K, displacing the KKK.
Oh, yes, yes.
Borrowing a letter to transform a race and to imbue you with the intellectual brilliance, and looking at the place of lynching and the memory of black people beyond the rope, a brilliant book. And so those, Sister Vanessa, right? As an actress, transforming the stage into a pocket of memory where we sing the psalms of black existence. Brother Reuben, fighting hard for this center to exercise its legitimate authority. My nephew, Brother Bright, and my other nephew, Brother Bright, doing what they do and fighting and advocating. Black folk have often done it by ourselves without credit. And then to have people insult us by telling us we don't need to be helped by no government, we pay taxes. What you think? And many white brothers and sisters have been misled to believe that they did it all by themselves. Born on third base, think you hit a triple. And look, look, when white folks say, and I get it, I'm not a beneficiary of white privilege. Dr. Dyson, I work hard. I ain't denying that you work hard, but you ain't the only one working hard. Your hard work can often pay off. White privilege doesn't mean that you get rich. It means the people who get rich are likely to be white, right? Before Harvard admitted black folk or any other folk who were people of color or minoritized populations, they still had to make a decision about who got in and who didn't. So even when all white folk were getting in, all white folk couldn't get in, right? White privilege doesn't mean that all white people will be rich. It means that the most people who will be rich will be white. It means that not all white people will get into Harvard, but the ones who got in were all white at a point, right? Babe Ruth didn't hit 1,713 home runs against the best ball players. He hit them against the best white ball players, right? I mean, before Michael Jordan and Earl Lloyd died, a few years ago? The first black ball player in the National Basketball Association. I know it's hard to even remember. And imagine that Negroes were not playing at one point in the NBA. Look at what we did. Now it's 80% black and a few white boys from Eastern Europe.
Oh, no.
Doncic. Nowitzki, right? Dirk Nowitzki, right? We need an affirmative action for the American-born white guy. A Larry Bird exception. So the point is that black people have often, without assistance, done what we've done, and proudly so. And yet, if we are to have justice, we've got to have an adjustment in the broader economic, cultural landscape in order for us to derive our benefits. When Tupac said, just the other day I got lynched by some crooked cops, and to this day them same cops on the beat getting major pay. But when I get my check, they taking tax out, so we paying the cops to knock the blacks out. You're subsidizing your own oppression. So we deserve and demand representation. But when you think about how we did what we did here in Tulsa, after bombs were dropped, after assault weapons were deployed against black flesh, after lynching and murder, that we rose up and demanded again that we be recognized in the power and the virtue of our common human identity is a mark of the determination of those people to be fully human while demanding justice at the same time.
Oh, Lord. Thank you. That, I mean, what you explain is just how this resilience is deep in our tradition, our black tradition that goes into slavery. And so thank you for sharing that. But one of the things that really unsettled me, and you said the point of education is to be unsettled. One of the things that you said that unsettled me was that we have to love the hell out of each other. I just can't get that out of my head. We have to love the hell out of each other in order to heal from these deep wounds of that racism and white supremacy, colonialism have created around the world. We need to love the hell out of each other. And so for you who are not just, and this is what people need to understand, not just a professor at a university, you are an ordained minister, Baptist minister. And so I want you to help us to understand, how do we love the hell out of each other? What does that look like in terms of education and the curriculum? How do we bring that into to fruition,
Right,
if you will?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And how it looks, what it looks like is this fight over CRT right now. We got to name the nonsense for what it is. We can't accept the terms of the dominant culture imposed on us when all we want is what any other group or race wants, right? The ability to go to school, to have our kids treated with respect, the ability to raise our children in an environment where they are respected and loved, where the history of America is taught, and where the global dimensions of our struggle are acknowledged as both American citizens and as human beings. And so the insistence that, we not accept the banning of books. I mean, I thought, wait a minute. Again, I thought the conservatives and the Republicans were the party of free speech. They're complaining that certain of their speakers don't get a chance to speak on a college campus. And I'm for everybody talking, because I don't want nobody telling me what to say. I ain't gonna tell you what to say. And if I got a problem with your speech, I'm gonna get more speech to counteract what you're doing. Now, not if you're out here trying to call for the death of human beings, not if you're out here trying to, collect the resources to demonize entire groups of people, right? That transfers from speech and translates from speech to action. That speech act is an act of violence that we have to really oppose. But for the most part, I'm for having people talk and speak and write and think, because I don't want nobody telling me what kind of books to write. They be writing me, they call me names, you MF, you N-word, calling me nigga, everything. I just, to the point, just call me Dr. Nigga if you gonna do that now, That PhD from Princeton real, so that's Professor Nigga to you, all right? But the thing is that there is resistance and resentment to who we are as a people. And in order to love the hell out of white brothers and sisters in particular, we got to have other white allies, like many of whom are gathered here tonight, and others outside this room, who have to say to the DeSantises and the Cruzes and the Rubios and the Josh Howleys and all, and the Marjorie Greens and the Lauren Boeberts and all these folk, and the Herschel Walkers and the Clarence Thomases, your woman is actively involved in insurrection, and you on the Supreme Court, man. So, we don't love the hell out of you by just accepting what you do. We got to oppose you. Jesus said, and the gates of hell should not prevail. The gates ain't coming to your crib. You got to go to them. You got to storm the gates of hell. So for me, what's important is to resist the kind of malarkey, as the president would call it, the kind of shenanigans that are being perpetuated and perpetrated by folk who claim to be truly American. How you gonna go on January 6th and drag a Confederate flag through the U.S. Capitol, and you mad that Colin Kaepernick is taking a knee on the gridiron? Now, we hear today that the Raiders are going to give him a chance. Man, I might buy a Raiders ticket if they get that brother shot. I might get the black and gold out here. What's up? I might do some Ice Cube lyrics. Now, how we love the hell out of them is insist that the truth of our communities be heard and amplified in halls of learning that are part of a sacred communion of intelligentsia. So loving hell out of people at this point is to challenge them, is to force them to confront the truth as we understand it, and then by redemption, not hatred, not trying to knock you down, but trying to convince you that the way of black people has been superior. Isn't it interesting? When Martin Luther King Jr. was talking about black folk dying, people are praising him. Black bloodshed, people are being praised. But if we suggest it for nations, if we suggest you do it with Ukraine and Russia, if we suggest that you do it in political affairs, you call us goofy. You say that we are idealizing what are essentially human interactions on a local scale. And yet what we're saying is no. We have to transform America through an ethic of love. But that love, as Dr. King said, is not namby-pamby, is not weak, it is strong. It is insistent that the truth be told, that justice reign, and that the democracy we claim to represent must be held precious by all parties, and we will fight to the end for that. That is forcing ourselves to love the hell out of our brothers and sisters by engaging in redemptive activities of justice that allow us to signify on, symbolize, and then amplify the truth as we know it. To me, that's the kind of love we need, the tough love, the love that demands responsibility, the love that says to white brothers and sisters, we ain't gonna hate you, we ain't gonna dog you, but we encourage you that to tell the truth. And we can't give in to your women caprice that you want to now outlaw the teaching of black history while you celebrating traitors to the Union. Traitors. The Confederacy is traitorous, is treacherous. And this is the flag we celebrate. And yet when Black Lives Matter comes, you want to outlaw protests. So loving the hell out of them means forcing them to see the hellish character of what they're doing. Only when you love somebody will you take the time and adopt the patience to be able to point that out. And then still, without hatred, without violence, and without negativity. Let me end by saying this. This is why some of these white replacement people are scared. They think Negroes, if we ever get the kind of power they're afraid we shouldn't have, will do to them what they did to us. We done already proved we ain't gonna do that. That ain't what we trying to do. We out here just trying to live our lives let us, pedicure our lawns the way we want to, move into the crib the way we want to. If we can't eat the Walmart Juneteenth ice cream because it's gone, but, Ben and Jerry, whatever we get, Amos Cookie, just let us live and do what we do because we have contributed immeasurably to American society. And we love you enough to tell that truth.
And we need to end soon, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a timely question in the wake of the recent shootings that have happened and the just deep despair, sadness, frustration, hopelessness that exists, that we all feel. I want you to talk about where your hope is right now amidst all of the tragedy that has happened in the last, not just the last few days, but
yes, sir. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. Not the blood of white supremacists, not the blood of bigots, not the blood of haters, not the blood of thirsty people who hunger and who thirst and hunger for the destruction of black and brown and red and yellow flesh. And it's not optimism. As the great theologian Reinhold Niebuhr said, optimism is a shallow virtue. Hope, the word that this brilliant scholar used, is deeply entrenched inside a human community, a figure, a culture, a tradition. Hope, as the Bible says, hope against hope. Even when you can't see it, you believe it. As the old black preachers used to say, God stepped out on nothing and something was there. Here we are, creating ex nihilo, out of nothing. We believe in a God who created something out of nothing. And so my hope is not built upon what America will do or should do. My hope is built upon what we are capable of doing. If against the odds, like you talk about what black people did in Tulsa, what black people did after Reconstruction, after black people could vote, then couldn't vote, and then worked for 60 some odd years, right? Until 1965, when we could, we kept on going. As they say among the feminists, and she persisted. We done been persistent. We done been doing it, right? And so my hope rests upon the noble trajectory of love and sacrifice that black people have manifested in this cruel democracy that has been insensitive to our human identity. And at the end of the day, the ability of human beings to cross barriers of race and gender and class, to see each other as worthy of love and respect. And by the way, we got to do that for ourselves too. All black lives should matter, not just the ones you agree with and like. And look, it ain't about calling nobody black. Clarence Thomas gonna be black till he die. So is Herschel Walker. I still disagree with what you doing. It don't mean you ain't black. You just ain't the kind of black I recognize, understand historically, and it would have fought for you to become who you are. The irony is the kind of blackness you got wouldn't allow you to exist. Clarence? Because the blackness you favor doesn't even believe in affirmative action, and yet, Negro, how you think you got where you is? No talking on the damn court. It ain't because you're silent, you ignorant.
oh, Lord.
Ain't got nothing to say, but you listening to Jenny at the crib. Howsoever, as James Brown would say. My hope is built upon the invisible community of love and justice and determination to transform this nation that has fueled us from the very beginning. And so my people, if my people called by my name would humble themselves and pray to God, then, but I don't want nobody praying that you believe in God the way I believe in God, and God just be conducive to my bigotry. So you go to church, in a black church, and you don't let women stand on the pulpit. You a bigot too. You a bigot too. If you talking about, I don't want no gay people in this church, Negro, where the choir going? And not only that, sometimes where the preacher going? Man, don't make me tell the truth up in here. Don't make me tell the truth up in here. And so stop idolizing and fetishizing your bigotry. Howard Thurman said a bigot is a person who makes an idol of his commitments. A bigot is a person who makes an idol of his or her commitments. Be committed to the truth, not the vehicle through which you articulate it. And at the end of the day, that hope that I have is beyond even your religious beliefs. If you for love, you in my religion. If you ain't, me and you ain't, they don't know the same God. I don't care if you read the Bhagavad Gita, the Holy Quran, the Bible, the Old Testament, the Upanishads, the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, Black Panther, whatever you're reading. At the end of the day, if you do not love, you do not know God. And so, my hope is built upon the impossible possibilities that we continually reveal under the pressure of love in the presence of grace, pressing toward the face of God. That's what I believe in as a basis of hope.
Oh, that's a beautiful vision. That is a beautiful vision. And I can say on behalf of all of these wonderful people who have been here and rapt attention, thank you for being in conversation with us. Thank you for helping us to understand dimensions of this, the moral dimensions of this tragic history, but a story of resilience as well, and a story that, as I said, I'm going to spend the rest of my career trying to understand. So on behalf of us all, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, e pluribus unum. Yes, out of many comes one. Dr. Dyson, thank you so much. You have given us a lot of information, and we have our marching orders as far as during these challenging times, and we just thank you for being with us tonight. Can we give Dr. Dyson another hand? So we're going to close out. Once again, I want to thank our sponsors. There should be a QR code so that you can take our survey so that you let the center know how we're doing so far. Just want to remind you that tomorrow at 10 o'clock we'll be at Oklahoma State University at Tulsa in the auditorium. And we'll kick off the second part of this program. And tomorrow evening, we're going to have Dr. Natalia Mellon present. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a good evening. Yes. Absolutely. I am so sorry. Dr. Dyson will be available for book signing in the vestibule, as they say in the church. And yes, and their Magic Bookstore does have books out there for his signature. So we're going to get you out there, Dr. Dyson. All right, I got 2 books for you. Okay.